Hello Year 10s. Whether you're working from home or whether you are in class, today we are going to have a look at one of the four pathogens, which is the virus. You're going to need your biology book, your stationery, and hopefully you're ready to go. Okay, so what have we learned before? We all know that pathogens are disease-causing microorganisms. Can you remember the four groups of pathogens? Well done. There's viruses, such as COVID. There's bacteria, such as the bacteria that causes strep throat or salmonella. We have fungi, such as athlete's foot, or a fungus on trees called Callera ash dieback that's killed loads of ash trees. And then our fourth group is probably the one people forget the most. It's the protists, the unicellular organisms made out of one cell only. And the most famous one is probably Plasmodium vivax. And this little critter is found inside the saliva of a mosquito. And it's actually this protist that enters you when the mosquito bites you that makes you get malaria. But today we are going to focus on viruses. But before we do that, let's do a little bit of exam practice. So in your head, this question says viruses and bacteria cause diseases in humans. Draw a ring around the correct word to complete the sentence. Organisms that cause disease are called algae, pathogens, or vaccines. Pause the video and decide which answer you'll go for. Okay, so which one did you go for? Well done. It is, of course, pathogens. We've got to remember that some bacteria and some fungi are perfectly wonderful, such as the bacteria that creates yogurt, and of course the fungi that gives us delicious mushrooms. So it's only those disease-causing ones that are called pathogens. Let's see how you do in this question. In August 2011, the United Nations gave a warning that there was a new strain of the bird flu virus in China. Bird flu may kill humans. The new strain of the bird flu virus could cause a pandemic very quickly. And in fact, bird flu was a type of coronavirus. Here's the question. What is a pandemic? Is it a disease affecting the people all over one country, a disease affecting hundreds of people, or a disease affecting people in many countries? I think you might just have this one. I think we're all becoming experts in this. It is, of course, affecting many countries. So that is why we describe COVID as a pandemic rather than just an epidemic. Okay, well done. Now let's focus on what are viruses, and I'll let you know clearly what I would like you to copy into your books. So it says here, a virus is composed of a capsid, which is a protein coat, and nucleic acids, either DNA or RNA. You see, a virus isn't considered living because it's not a cell with a nucleus and cytoplasm and mitochondria and all the things we've come to know with cells. The only cell-like thing it does have is nucleic acids, and nucleic acids are the things that make up DNA and RNA. So we've got this DNA inside a protein coat, and that is the virus. So they don't have a nucleus, and that's why we describe them as acellular. They're not a cell. They also cannot replicate or divide on their own. They need to make use of a host cell to reproduce. The host can be a human, it could be an animal, it could be a plant, a fungus, or even a bacteria. So we know that COVID's been found in bats, it's been found in minks in Denmark recently, it's been found in humans. So viruses can move into any type of host. They're described as non-living, intercellular, which means they go between cells. Right. How do they go from one host to another? Well, they can go through body fluids in the case of a virus such as HIV. They can be passed on by physical contact. So, for example, if someone's got chickenpox, through the air, as we know with COVID, through food sometimes, and sometimes from one organism to another. What I would like you to do is copy down the notes with the subheadings, what are viruses, and the second one, how viruses are passed from one host to another, and copy down the points, underlining the keywords. When you're ready, start the video again. Okay, good job. Have you underlined the keywords? Right. Let's have a look at the structure of the virus. Now, there's different types of viruses. COVID, for example, has got lots of these spikes on the outside, and so much so that they described it as a crown, and that's where the word corona comes from. But there are different types of viruses. This one here is described as a bacteriophage. It tends to invade bacteria, and this virus over here is one of a couple of viruses that causes influenza or flu. Now, what we notice they have in common, they've got a protein coat on the outside, and then they have nucleic acid. In the case of influenza, the nucleic acid makes up RNA, and in the case of the bacteriophage, the nucleic acid forms DNA, deoxyribose nucleic acid, as opposed to ribose nucleic acid. This one's got a tail and these lovely little fibers, whereas the influenza's got these little spikes on the outside. So it says there, at the center of all viruses, the DNA or RNA is found enclosed by the capsid. The capsid is a type of protein that is designed to protect the DNA or the RNA. The capsomere contains genes that allows the virus to transfer its nucleic acid into the host. You see, any kind of nucleic acid is an information chemical that passes on information, and that's why it's the one part that the virus does have that cells do indeed have. I'd like you to pause the video and copy the diagram and the notes. Right, good job. I hope you've labelled in pen and drawn in pencil. Let's move on. Okay, so this little note here, which you don't need to write down, the tails and spikes help the viruses attach to its host. They're like grippers, and viruses with tails are known as satellite viruses. There's an interesting fact. Okay, and this in fact is the COVID virus with all its spikes, making it very easy to attach from person to person. Okay, now we need to be able to explain in an exam, how do viruses cause illnesses? Well, we know that they live inside, or they infect body cells. And it's almost like a game of hide and seek, because once they hide inside those cells, nothing can get to them. And that's why it's difficult for drugs to enter the cells, or the drug would actually kill the cell. We know that antibiotics only affect bacteria. I always say antibiotics, antibiotic for bacteria. It's so important you remember that antibiotics only kill bacteria. They're useless against viruses. And therefore, your doctor won't give you any antibiotics because it could just cause antibiotic resistance. The problem is that these viruses mutate frequently, and that means that their structure changes, which makes it more difficult for us to keep a handle on them. Please pause the video and copy these 4 important points down. Well done. Make sure you've got the heading, how do viruses cause illness? And this was a 4-mark question in a recent exam. Okay, now we're going to have a look at how these viruses infect our cells and what they do. And in fact, they can undergo one of 2 life cycles, or some of them undergo both parts. Let's have a look. The first one is called the lytic cycle. So in the lytic cycle, here we've got a bacteriophage which is attaching to the host cell. This could be any kind of other virus. It could be a COVID virus attaching to one of your cells, or hopefully not. So the virus attaches to the host cell, and then what the virus does is it has a way of injecting all its DNA into your cell. So the red part is the virus's DNA that's now inside your cell. And the reason why it has to go inside the cell is because the virus uses all your cellular machinery to reproduce itself. So now you can see from having 1 strand of DNA, we now have 5 strands of DNA. So the virus is starting to replicate or reproduce. Now, part of the viral protein coat gets produced from genes in the viral DNA. So the viral DNA codes for all this information, and it then all comes together. So the virus particles are able to self-assemble into a new virus. You imagine a Ferrari parts that were just able to self-assemble. That's rather an amazing thing to be able to do. And finally, what happens, you can see now the cell is bursting with all these viruses inside it. And now what's going to happen is the cell's going to burst. Now, in chemistry, we've learned about catalysis or catalyst. Lysis means to split. So that's why we call this the lytic cycle, because the cell, your cell is going to burst open as it's overrun by the virus. And this damages or kills the cell. Pause the video, and using half a page or a whole page if you wish, I want you to draw out the cycle and the pictures.